go. My favorite show with Scott Needles, the Bitcoin show, and it's always timely. Look at that Bitcoin rocketing up the last couple of days, right? Banging on the door of its all-time highs there. I think right now it's at 120 or something like that, right? 126.29 in U.S. dollars, and gold off a bit, and that's on news, like you were saying just before we went live there, that J.P. Morgan says time to maybe move some of the money out of gold and into Bitcoin.
Yeah, this is a really interesting one, I think, and totally newsworthy because JP Morgan and Jamie Dimon specifically has been like really anti-Bitcoin for a long time and loves to even like kind of spread Bitcoin disinformation whenever he gets the opportunity to, especially when he's at the Davos Forum, World Economic Forum meetings. But yeah, there was a report that came out today sort of making the opinion, it's a combination of factors that part of it has to do with gold's really being so on a historic run since the end of August, and the relative ratio of the prices between Bitcoin and gold now suggests to their analysts that it could be a good trade. The other thing that they said that it was also really interesting is that they're now referencing Bitcoin as the debasement trade, which is really cool because Bitcoin people, we've been talking about this for a long time. Finite money, you're really buying a finite form of money and you're selling an infinite form of money. And our money, the problem and the reason why it can't retain its value is because they're continually making more of it. So to see like mainstream institutions now start to identify and associate Bitcoin with being a trade to protect yourself from currency debasement is another one of these almost like eye-popping moments. Like it's really not that long ago that mainstream media was still saying that Bitcoin is like a whatever, it's a scam, and now it's a trade to protect yourself from currency debasement.
Well, I think when you and I started the show, I said it was a scam, didn't I?
Yeah, totally.
And then as we did the show, I think part of the group that was watching was to see if you could, was that red pill me or whatever, Bitcoin pill,
orange pill,
orange pill or something like that. Anyway, it worked. And then JP Morgan has a target right now. They're saying 165,000 by the end of the year. That's a jump. I mean, that's a huge jump. And that's what, a thing that a lot of people like to jump in on trades when that, what they're saying is what they see as the value and what the current value is. And obviously that statement by them has moved the market because the Bitcoin has moved quite a bit in the last couple of days, actually, right? You see that if we can pull up a Bitcoin chart as well, that would be good. If you could go find, or I'll just put the link in there for you.
I mean, Bitcoin has a long history of when it starts to run, it really runs. And this is true of most, days in and out of the market. Why people tend to lose when they try to trade Bitcoin is because like most of the action that would happen in terms of price appreciation for Bitcoin during a year would happen in a handful of days or, in a very short period of time. So, but there are a bunch of other reasons I think why Bitcoin has been moving. And another one of them I thought would be good to like spend a little bit of time talking about on the show today is the inclusion of 3 of Strategy's preferred share offerings on Robinhood.
If you could click 1 year on there, or even like on the bottom of that chart there, click the 1 year or even the 6 month. You actually click a month just to show a month because it's been sitting for a while. And we talked about how that band's tight, and you can see there the last few days how it's kind of like started to move, right?
But yeah, and it looks like it's breaking out. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so 165 would be a long way from here, but one of the things they say in that JP Morgan article is Bitcoin is so much smaller than gold as an asset class that the total number of dollars that would be needed to make that kind of a move is 1/6 of the amount of money that would be required, or even less than would be to move the gold price that same amount. So it's an easier number to nudge because it's a smaller number.
I just want to say one thing for people, because I get calls from lots of people all my life. I've had these calls, and it's just like, when it goes down, like it was 120 something, and then it goes down to like 108, and then people are just like, yeah, see, I told you, I didn't want to buy it. I don't want to buy it at 108. That's crazy. And then I get calls today at 120, just like, oh, I got to buy it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
You and I talk, and and you're the sponsor of this show, and part of that sponsorship is like, it's a payroll savings plan where you kind of like dollar cost average in. So then, you bought some at 108, you bought some at 110, you bought some maybe at 96. And you buy it at different things, and you're not too worried about price. You're buying a position, right, as opposed to, trying to time the market. Obviously, trying to time, a market is tough, no matter whether you're buying Tesla stock or Bitcoin or whatever it is that you're trying to buy.
Yeah, I mean, and I think this is coming back to that previous point, like why I love the narrative around the debasement trade. Why do you buy Bitcoin? I mean, some people buy it because they think it's going to go up, and there's nothing wrong with that. Personally, I buy Bitcoin because of the likelihood I know that the dollar is going to go down. And so I'm a believer in the debasement trade. And that's not a trade that happens like I'm not trying to win that trade in one single swing. It's me gradually moving my paper dollars, which are becoming worth less all the time, into something that I think is a safer place for where to put my money. So, yeah, easing in, buying regularly, not being too worried about catching the bottom or trying to predict where it's going to go. It's like that with any asset, like you said, with gold to be the same.
Yeah, and you recommended a guy I did an interview with yesterday, and advised people to go watch that, talking about an economic winter. And it might get really cold here in Canada. You might want to get some wood, some jackets, some insulation, because that budget they're going to present here in November is likely not going to warm the place up. It's you can talk about currency debasement. That might be even our own PBO's office has said the budget is shocking, stupefying, alarming, unsustainable, and that we're staring into the precipice. And they're trying to press him on what's in the precipice. And he's not trying to. I mean, CPAs are tough to answer that, but like the abyss is in the precipice. That's what's in the precipice, right over the. You know what I mean? That's what's there.
Totally. I mean, this is a Bitcoin show, not politics, but we love talking politics, Jim. I saw that session in Commons and immediately thought of you, and it's like you have now you couldn't have people being any more clear that we cannot continue on the course we are with spending recklessly and accumulating this kind of debt without having some really serious repercussions. And they're going as far as to say, like, it's if it's not too late already, we're getting really close. So these are like, people need to be thinking about this. I think it's just prudent to be thinking about different strategies, things that you want to be after the 2008 financial crisis, they just started printing money and basically everything went up for like 12 years. And I don't think that's what's going to happen again over the next 12 years. Joseph was talking about this concept of asset prices are really tied to the availability of credit, and credit tends to contract in the kinds of conditions. Like this is what he's talking about when he's talking about winter, right? So, things are going to be different.
Yeah, and then if you have access to ChatGPT or Grok or anything like that, just go and punch in how is Canada similar to Venezuela, and what happened to the people in Venezuela to their money, and it's a good question to ask yourself.
Yeah, I mean, and like I met people, in my Bitcoin travels, and currency events happen all over the world all the time. The average lifespan of a paper currency outside of the Western world is 22 years. And places like Argentina and Venezuela and even Lebanon that have had recent currency events, they're not third world countries. Like they're in hard shape now. But Venezuela was like a really thriving,
the richest country in South America, the richest country
totally.
in South, and the richest. Yeah. They have like oil reserves like similar to Canada.
Yeah, and they blew it up in a very short period of time. And Joseph was pointing this out. I've seen him talk about it before. Like people also don't understand how high interest rates can go, because central banks can try to dictate, but there's a free market component. And, at some point interest rates respond to what the market demands. And like in Greece, they went into like 60%. In Argentina, like they measure the inflation is so high that they measure it by month, because the annual number is too crazy. And one of the more recent ones, like in Lebanon in February of 2023, the Central Bank of Lebanon devalued the Lebanese pound by 90% overnight, one night. So everybody in the country basically woke up the next day and had 90% of their wealth confiscated. And I know people who were there during that time, and it was like just a completely unimaginable. Nobody saw it coming, and yet it happened. And so it's like, I think part of it too is people thinking like that can't happen here, and even some of the the commentary coming from the liberal side of the aisle in response to um, Jacques' comments were very much that, like, head in the sand. It's funny, like there's been this thing about ostriches, because to me, like, it was just totally like an ostrich, this can't happen here moment. But we definitely can. I mean, it's just math.
I think
There's no.
a lot of people compare us to the U.S. and say, well, look at that currency, look at the debt they have. I mean, they forget a couple of things when they look at the U.S. dollar. The U.S. dollar is a reserve currency for basically every central bank in the world, and they also have the strongest military in the world. So those two things are big props for their concerns, like that prop up that concern. Although it is devalued all the time as well, but they have something that Canada doesn't have, right? Canada can't compare to the United States as far as military might, and also we're not a reserve currency for anybody. Like we typically
I mean,
we have reserve currency in its UST bills.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, and the other thing that we don't have is, like, when the IMF issues a loan to a third world country, that loan is denominated in dollars,
Yeah.
US dollars. And so other countries devalue their own money to pay back loans denominated in US dollars. So the world still needs dollars. Like the petrodollar system dictates that most of the energy deals are settled in dollars still for now.
Most
and
currency,
as long as that's
most
going on,
commodities.
Yeah. 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 So no, I think it's troubling to see leadership in Canada, and so again, like, protecting yourself from things that you have no control over with assets that should be resistant to currency debasement is something everybody should be thinking about learning more about.
I cut you off. You were going to say something about Robinhood, and then we kind of
Yeah.
went down a different road. Maybe just finish that thought.
Yeah, no, this is, I think, a really interesting thing that people wouldn't necessarily be following. So Strategy, when we've talked about Strategy before, they are the largest corporate accumulators of Bitcoin. And they started this in 2020, buying Bitcoin, and everybody thought Michael Saylor, who was their chairman and CEO, was a moron. And it's been the best performing stock over the last 5 years. And today they're sitting on like 600,000 Bitcoin, some huge number. So originally what they started doing was buying Bitcoin, and then their stock started going up, and then they just kept buying more Bitcoin. And then later, much later on, it was early this year, they have started issuing different kinds of financial products to help them buy even more Bitcoin. And so 3 of those are tickers: STRK, STRF, and STRC. And these are preferred share offerings where basically it's like a debt contract where somebody would give MicroStrategy $100 as a loan, and they pay a 10% dividend on that loan, and then they take that money and they buy Bitcoin. So this is really significant for a few reasons. One is there are lots of entities, pensions, reinsurers that can't necessarily buy Bitcoin, but they are Bitcoin ETFs, but they can buy a product like this. And with a 10% yield on it, it is basically better than any sort of T-bill or fixed income security you could get anywhere else. And so Strategy's thesis is that if they're paying out 10% to buy something that's compounding at 40%, that's a winning deal that they can take all day. And what it's doing is making it hard for people who are looking for fixed income to not buy that thing. And the more people that buy it, the more money they have to buy Bitcoin, which sends the Bitcoin price even higher. So what happened today is that those 3 things are now available on Robinhood. And so Robinhood users, and this is like the largest platform for individual self-directed traders, I think, now have access to these instruments that yield 10%. And so it's basically a straight line. The more money that goes into that thing, the more money Saylor has to buy more Bitcoin. And this is to get back to the point of, well, how do we get from 120,000 to 165,000? 10% is a pretty juicy yield. and a lot of people would take a guaranteed 10% for at least part of their portfolio. Pension funds, the market for this thing is huge.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting for sure. If you look at some of the, like the lot of like, and even we go back to stock trades that I've done most of my life, a lot of the money is made in a few days. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's just how things work, right? It's like and then it kind of bounces along, and all of a sudden a huge step, right? And then bounce and then step, and then bounce and then step. And you see that in Bitcoin, right? If you look through its history, right? I mean, it's had these huge moments, right? And like, and then it kind of flatlines. And you can look at Tesla, you can look at different stocks, and you'll see the same thing, right? You'll see
Mhm.
these revaluations and that. And the J.P. Morgan statement, obviously, you're seeing the effects of it right now, right? Because I think the last time you and I talked, we talked about how that band is kind of compressing until there's a news event, and there's your news event, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's been a few too. I think it was last week or maybe the week before was the first time. So there's this new category of companies. We think of them as sort of Bitcoin conscious companies, companies that are demonstrating externally that they understand Bitcoin and why you would want to be interested in it. These are companies that are starting to own Bitcoin as a corporate treasury asset, and Strategy was the first one. There's about 200 now, I think, publicly traded companies that have disclosed some Bitcoin position. And one of them was a company called Semler Scientific. The ticker on that one is SMLR. And Semler is another example of these. They're kind of like often zombie companies. And this was true of Strategy. Strategy had sort of a flatlining software business that they still operate, but had been treading water for 20 years. And that's when they started buying Bitcoin. And Semler Scientific is some kind of, it's like a medical healthcare technology company. And they had accumulated 5,000 Bitcoin. And last week, this is the first one of these that's happened. They were acquired by Vivek Ramaswamy's Bitcoin treasury company, Strive. And this was a big deal. First time this has happened where a company has been acquired outrightly because of its Bitcoin treasury. And it's maybe signaling a bit of a land grab where, these companies that own publicly traded companies that own Bitcoin as part of their share valuation have a different metric. They're measuring how much Bitcoin they have per share. And so they're trying to do something that's unorthodox, and I would say very few investors still understand. And but if they're right, these things. And to go back to Strategy, um, Strategy has, I think, today about $76 billion of Bitcoin on their balance sheet, and at 200,000, it's 125 billion. So that number can radically change their balance sheet optics in a very short period of time, depending on how fast Bitcoin can move like that. Actually, that reminds me, Jim. Sorry, the other piece of news that I think has had an effect on this is within the last day or two, the IRS made a further ruling to say that these corporate treasuries are not going to be subject to any kind of unrealized capital gains in their Bitcoin positions. So because of the way the fair market value accounting now works, companies are allowed to write up an increase in Bitcoin value and show that as sort of as a positive earnings. And this is going to theoretically encourage more publicly traded companies to follow Strategy's footsteps. And it's like, this is a finite thing, right? Every
Yeah, so they'll have to
Bitcoin.
pay what when they sell it. They'll have to claim the gain. But I mean, it just causes an accounting nightmare. Up, down, up, down, up,
Yeah.
down. Right? Like, and then so that's just like cash on a balance sheet, right? You're not writing it up and down
So
as on.
it used to be the case that they had to write it down, but couldn't write it up.
Right. Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it would encourage, especially when you're looking at some of these companies that are sitting on vast amounts of cash. Like, you talk about Tesla, Apple, I mean, Google, look at the Meta, look at the amount of cash
Mhm.
they're sitting on. They're sitting on tons and tons of cash, right? And they typically don't, they put it in short-term, treasuries probably in different things like that, and mostly in very liquid assets, right? Although Tesla is one of the more unusual ones that does have about $128 billion still in Bitcoin as well, right?
I mean, this is the thing that I was talking about with Ken Sim, Mayor of Vancouver, when we had our presentation at the Bitcoin event we were talking about in the last episode in the middle of August. Because Vancouver is no different than any publicly traded company, they're sitting on around $3 billion. And Ken's contention is that they're losing like around 500 million in purchasing power because of the 10% debasement of the Canadian dollar more.
Yep.
So it doesn't make sense for cities or provincial governments, basically every entity under a federal level government at any jurisdiction has the same penalty of having to use money that they can't control how much of it is created and at what rate.
And I'm a big gold bug still, I guess. Gold. I favor gold, but it's tough. Like, say if Tesla wanted to put 128 billion in gold, all of a sudden they have a storage problem too, right? Like, you know what I mean? They have an issue now. All of a sudden they got Fort Knox there somewhere, right? Because 128 billion dollars is enough to figure out how to use that like a torch there to get the doors off or something. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Whereas with Bitcoin, obviously you got to remember where you put your password. But I'm sure they figured out more than a couple of places to store that, right? But yeah, it's amazing. Like, if you think about that, if I just use Tesla as an example, that company, just its Bitcoin holdings alone, are worth more than many the market cap on many companies, like probably a lot of the automakers.
Yeah.
$128 billion. And then if you look at MicroStrategy, I mean, that thing is just, the market cap on that is what? Bitcoin value.
Yeah, let me put it this way, Jim. As I said, I believe firmly that it won't be that far away from us having $1 million Bitcoin. And when we do, MicroStrategy's 600,000 Bitcoin would be worth $6 trillion.
Yeah, right now, $71 billion, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, as far as what this means for how we think about stocks and the valuation of companies, they really believe that they're pioneering an entirely new way of how companies should be evaluated from their financial health.
I do want to correct myself. That's Tesla's balance sheet shows 128 billion. That's not all Bitcoin. I looked at it. I'm thinking that doesn't make sense. But yeah, so my friend ChatGPT here is just doling out the information here, but definitely they don't have that much Bitcoin.
No, yeah, I thought it was a bit high.
Yeah, but hey, you never know with Elon, right? But yeah, so a lot of these companies are sitting on tons of cash. Apple's one of them for sure. Apple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and it was earlier this year, Microsoft invited Saylor to present to their executive leadership team on the merits of Microsoft employing a Bitcoin treasury strategy. And they gave him 3 minutes, and they ultimately voted it down. But I think all of these companies are going to, at one time or another, have to consider the strategy. And there is a penalty for everyone who waits longer than someone else. So the longer you wait, the less you get to buy.
Yeah, so ChatGPT just said that Tesla has about 11,500 Bitcoin worth about $1 billion. There you go.
Not bad.
Yeah. Hey, better than nothing. And then, like that 1 billion could be worth 1.5 billion if it goes to 100. You know what I mean? Like that's the thing, right? So, yeah, big news, that JP Morgan thing too, right? And again, bearish before, right?
Yeah, things can change fast.
And the Canadian government bearish on Bitcoin and on gold. No gold reserves in one of the only G7 nation not to hold any gold reserves, and also to have a negative viewpoint on Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's like I said, the best thing you can do, knowing that as a Canadian, is start establishing your own positions.
Yeah. So, plug on you. You're a sponsor of the show. You operate a payroll savings plan, a little bit different. Maybe just explain that.
Yes, Bitcoin savings plan. It's the easiest way for a company to let their employees convert some of their net pay at source to Bitcoin, and for a company to chip in and create a match savings plan or incent their employees to start thinking about Bitcoin just by offering them some Bitcoin without having them put any of their own money in. I think it's a totally unique benefit in the workplace, and really like the most important benefit of our time. People often are more willing to participate in financial tools if their employer has got behind the idea and suggested that this is something worth considering. And certainly if they are willing to go a little step further and put some of their own skin in the game. So yeah, if you're listening and you work somewhere, we'd love to talk to your employer. If you run a company and you're interested to learn more about how it works, we'd love to talk to you too. And you can find me at scott@blockrewards.ca.
There you go. Tom Lee, also a big fan of Bitcoin, but he's also promoting Ethereum right now too, saying that it'll be one that is used for transactions. I know you're not as big a
I
fan.
think Tom Lee is for sale if you want to get a news story about him. So
there you go. See, one of the things in this new AI world, though, you're going to start to see is that transactions are going to become faster and all seamless, right? And that's where digital currency will probably play a huge role in what goes on, right?
Yeah, there is a payments layer called Lightning, and we've talked about this, that sits above the base Bitcoin blockchain. And the throughput on the Lightning network is like thousands of times more faster and has more capacity than Visa and MasterCard combined. So the Lightning network is really, I think, the next iteration of streaming money in real time. It's like orders of magnitude faster than a regular blockchain because it's not a blockchain. And I think that there's an incredibly high likelihood that Bitcoin on the Lightning Network is the dominant currency of AI.
When did we start doing this Bitcoin show? I think it was around 60,000 or something, wasn't it? It's been a while, right?
I don't know. I mean, season one, it might have been even lower than that.
Somewhere in there anyway. So there you go. And we've been talking about it and for a while now. And obviously it's now looked like it wants to bang on a door of its old high, which was I think the mid 120s it kind of spiked to and then kind of dropped off that, right? But it held that 100,000 very well, right? Because, like those psychological barriers, it took a while to bust through that 100,000. When it did, it's holding that 100,000 very well. And it looks like it wants to challenge its old high right now.
I mean, I think, again, we've sort of talked about this, but to come back to this thing about STRF, STRK on the 10% dividend, the profile of who's buying and then not selling the Bitcoin is changing. So people who are now interested in a 10% return on a security don't need to care about Bitcoin. Bitcoin doesn't need to matter to them. They're just getting 10% return on something, which has appeal for everyone. And the money that is allocated to those positions then goes so MicroStrategy can buy Bitcoin and never sell it. So this is how higher floors are being established. The biggest buyers of Bitcoin are not selling. And another one of the big buyers of Bitcoin is Tether. Tether is the largest issuer of the USDT stablecoin. And like Tether just bought almost 9,000 Bitcoin, I think today. So they have an incredibly profitable business selling and issuing US dollar stablecoins all around the world. And their profits are reallocated back into buying US treasuries, gold, and Bitcoin. And they're just basically accumulating all of those things. And yeah, so the biggest buyers of Bitcoin are not selling and don't appear to be selling anytime soon.
Where is, I'm going to ask you this last question. Where's our friend Sam Bankman-Fried? Is he still in jail or is he off in the Bahamas somewhere?
Yeah, no, I think they let him out. This is like, we might have talked about this on one of our shows. I think, yeah, the entire FTX story from start to finish never held any water for me. I think it's very fishy. It wouldn't shock me if you even saw the FTX exchange resurrected and they were using FTX was objectively part of a money laundering scheme, sending political donations to the Ukraine. Like, so there are some very unsavory things that are tangential to the world of Bitcoin. There's nothing to do with Bitcoin,
he was
but
tied up into the web for sure. He was tied up into the dark web or whatever. But he's still serving his 25-year prison sentence. But I'd like to see that on a Zoom call or something.
Totally drinking Mai Tais.
All right. That's it for today. That was a great show as usual. Again, we'll be back. I think it's every couple of weeks. We'll see where the price of Bitcoin is then. Again, if you want to get a hold of Scott, you want to get your employees or yourself on a payroll savings plan and do dollar cost averaging. What's that? The Block Rewards is the website, and you can find.
There
There you go. All right. Thank you for watching Now Media.